Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Event Industry News podcast. This podcast is kindly sponsored by N200 GES, our smart event solution partner. For more information on N200 and its smart event solutions, please visit n200.com. So a very good afternoon to everybody joining our live stream today. Hope everybody's had a fabulous long Easter weekend. Tonight's live stream will allow you to interact in real time with our guests, giving you the power to put questions directly to them, get your opinions heard if you've got them, submit your questions via the live stream window on the device that you're watching us from, or you can tweet us at Event News Blog if you've got anything that you'd like to comment on or questions that you want to fire over to our guests. Keep your eye on eventindustrynews.com or download the brand new Event Industry News app, which will keep you notified of all the latest content, what's happening in the industry and everything that's happening on eventindustrynews.com. So tonight, we'll head over and welcome our guests. We are joined by Noah Ball and Andy Peyton, who are from the Sunfall Festival. I don't know a huge amount about the festival, which is why we've got the guys on tonight to have a chat about it. But I'm right in saying that the festival started last year, so it's going to be its second year. Guys, let's bring you into the conversation. A very good evening to both of you. Andy or Noah, who wants to tell us a little bit about Sunfall Festival?
Yeah, I will if you want.
Far away, Andy.
Sunfall Festival did its first year last year on July 12th in Brockwell Park, South London. Mm-hmm. It's a one-day dance music event in which everybody who attends the festival goes to a daytime outdoor event, and then most people, although not all, go on to an after party at various venues across London. It was the brainchild of myself and my kind of side of the team, which is the Columba Group, and the Noah's side of the team, which is the people behind Dimensions and Outlook Festival. It was, I think it's fair to say, it was kind of their baby to start with, and Noah and Joe from their end approached us guys about the idea of doing a London festival. And so that was about a year before, and last year was the first year. It sold out. We had Jamie XX headlining, and it was a fairly big success. We're very happy with it.
Noah, the idea of doing and launching a new festival in any guise is a daunting one. I'm not sure if you guys had experience of doing the outdoor side of events prior to last year's event, but taking on not just an outdoor element, but also running that in conjunction with indoor elements, all the ticketing, all the planning, all the logistics that has to go with that. How long was this in the pipeline prior to actually being able to launch it last year?
I think we'd first spoken about it. It was at least, it was approximately 10 months prior to the festival taking place that we sat down with the Columbo group and went through ideas of how we could create an event that sort of made sense in London, and an event that had its own unique, that made it stand out against the other London events. My company have been running festivals out in Croatia for 9 years, and they were all at big, sort of fairly big scale outdoor events. Prior to that, I had some experience in sort of concert and club promoting, but obviously then working within London, and especially with with having so many nighttime events as well, the partnership with Columbo, it made everything fairly straightforward, and I think the offering that the attendees were given was a different event to the other London festivals that are happening year on year.
And on that note, with so many other events, not just music festivals, but with London hosting and holding so many different types of outdoor event across the city, how easy was it to to go through the administrative side of things and get permission to do it first of all, and how easy is it to work with all the sort of the stakeholders in that particular part of what is right? If people look at where Brockwell Park is, it's right in the middle of South London, isn't it?
Yeah, so from a licensing perspective, it was fairly simple. The main point of contact for the day event was obviously Lambeth Council, and then all of the evening time events were fairly straightforward. You know, we were just dealing with venue managers. Some of the venues themselves were owned by the Colombo Group anyway, Phonox, and so it was. There was the communication in terms of setting everything up was focused in one direction at the Lambeth Council, and then multi-directionally for the evening with sort of each of the different nighttime venues.
Sure. Were there other venues considered outside of the one that was decided on? Were there several options, or was it always going to be that one because of its location and proximity to the evening venues as well?
We were quite keen for there to be a well represented South London festival event. You know, there's a lot that takes place in Victoria Park out in Hackney, or and with the Hyde Park runs of shows, we were quite keen for there to be something that celebrated the South London scene, and in the first year, I think 100% of the venues were within that area south of the river, and we worked with a lot of independent record labels and artists that were based in that were London based. So yeah, it was a good way to celebrate the venues and the artists and the labels that are so supportive of that music scene in London.
Andy, what's your particular role in the team with Sunfall, and how did the team evolve, or how was the team put together? Because presumably you need to have a pretty strong core team of people at management level to help deliver something like this.
Well, I think my history before getting involved with the Colombo Group, I was one of the assistant bookers for Sunfall Festival. So the politics involved in booking. And obviously, because I book the clubs, that's probably my forte. And so the bookings, the festival came from myself and Noah, and then the promotions again was my team who do the promotions for the clubs, and the team from Noah's company who do promotions for the Croatian festivals teamed up and worked quite nicely. The production side, to a large part, is Joe, Noah's business partner. But I'd say promotions and bookings and the general branding of stuff would be my role.
And how, with so many other events going off, and particularly summer festivals when artists are being booked and pulled from one place to the other very, very quickly, how early did you have to get on sorting the lineup this year, and how difficult is it to secure the lineup that you want to deliver the right show for the event, and what are there any compromises that have to be had with certain artists and booking certain artists for certain times of the year?
I think there's lots and lots of things that you have to navigate in order to get to your final festival lineup. The competition's obviously very, very intense, but then we have quite a specific audience in mind, and that audience is kind of lovers of underground music, underground dance music. It's very specific, and what is specific about that particular audience is that the artists who play that, more often than not, are less worried about their money, less worried about the fees, and more worried about the production levels and the sound quality. And the biggest compliment that we received and the biggest takeout from year one was how good the sound was relative to other London festivals. We really deliberately made sure that was our strength. knowing that in the long run that was the sort of music we'd want to book. And so we'll never have been the capacity that we are, and being the fact that we're not part of we're just a small independent festival in terms of the people involved, and it being self-funded. So, there's the majority of festivals in London and anywhere in the UK are owned by very, very big multinational companies like Live Nation,
Indeed,
who own several festivals. And so, because of the amount of sponsorship they'll get in, and because of their various ticketing deals, they'll always have bigger budgets than us. And so we always had in mind quite specific target audience and a specific certain type of artist to go with that. So, someone like Theo Parrish, it's not so much the money, it's more the trust in the sound. And luckily, because year one went the way it did, we were able to get artists like Theo and like Larry Heard to come and play.
And I'm pleased that you've brought that to our attention and mentioned that the quality of production that by the sounds of things everybody was going for, not just the artists but the team behind the festival as well. Because something that you guys do and have done on your Facebook page, which I've not seen in many other, let's say, mainstream festivals put out there before, is quite a lot of technical information about the sound, about what systems are being used, about the configuration even of the line array columns on either side of the main stage. This is, as you point out, something that's obviously key to the audience, to the artists, and to you guys as producers of the event. And one thing I would always say about the dance music community as a whole is they seem to be very, very savvy, don't they, about the technical side of things. They seem to be really savvy, maybe more so than other types of live music and live entertainment as to what's been done there. One thing that you do put on your Facebook page was that you'd employed some of the very best acoustic consultants in the industry from the very, very beginning to help, I would guess, not just design the systems themselves in terms of the best sound delivery, but given the location of the outdoor venue, you're right in the middle of an urban area, you are having to juggle delivering quality sound to the audience, but presumably also minimizing the noise impact on the surrounding areas. Who was it that you brought in to do that in the first instance?
In the first year, we used a gentleman called David Levisage, who's industry known as very much one of the very best in his field, and he's used by many of the biggest and events, but also events that have sensitivities with their sound issues, and so by working with him from the start, by working with Martin Audio for providing the main stage rig, the Martin Audio MLA system is very well known in the industry for being able to to apply the sound the best it can be within the area you want it to be aimed, and as you mentioned, sort of the hangs being placed several meters higher than you perhaps would at another event. If you're in the middle of the countryside and you don't have houses within 100 meters of you, then you probably wouldn't bother putting your line arrays, hanging them at such a height. But you pay that extra money to guarantee that the tops are aimed directly down at the audience, and then the bass bins work on a cardioid system, which can limit the dispersal of bass and actually push it so it's only moving forward, whereas other non-cardioid systems, bass frequencies travel in all directions 360 from the unit. So that was one of the main things that we sort of invested heavily into, to make sure that those people who were enjoying those artists were able to listen to them at levels that you can really appreciate the music, I guess.
Absolutely, and I'm sure a lot of people who have had experience of organising events, and even people who may be contemplating it, are slowly becoming more and more aware, even if it's not their main area of expertise, at just how much control you can have with a really high-end audio system now in an outdoor environment. The quality of the line arrays and the quality of the bass bins that you get now really can be done in such a way that you can step even just a couple of meters outside of their main throw, and you will hear it noticeably disappear. And I suppose the beauty of that is not just the control that you've got over the peripheral sound, but if you're wanting to put 2, 3, 4, 5 different arenas or stages into quite a small area, presumably that's also giving you a bit of scope to put other elements into the outdoor side of the festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and I guess also we only had this year, at least we're sticking with a similar floor plan, and that was only one outdoor stage, and the other 3 arenas are in tents, but again, unlike certain other festival events, they wouldn't bother walling the tents, because
Absolutely.
if it's a sunny day, people tend not to head into the tents. Whereas for us, the quality of the sound is paramount, and so actually making sure that the tents did come walled, and some additional things that we put in there just made sure that the sound was the best it could be in all of the arenas.
And again, for anybody just tuning in, or anybody watching this after this live stream has been broadcast on our catch-up video, head over to the Sunfall Festival's Facebook page, because there's some, I have to say, guys, thumbs up to you, because there's some great information. Whoever's managing that page for you, there's some really, really interesting information on there that people watching this episode of the podcast can go and have a little look at, and it tells you all about why the guys have done certain things, and just to prove it, there's one of the printouts from one of the images on the page that talks about putting the walls on the tented structures in order to create supplementary sound dampening and to maximize the levels that can be achieved within the actual tents themselves. So that's the audio side of things. When it comes to then managing things like the people, the flow of people coming in and out, again touching on the fact that this is in quite an urban area, this park, and if people look at it on a map, you'll see that there are main roads on all sides of the park. What is the access like on and off when you're actually building the event, and how difficult is it getting stuff into that part of London and actually onto the site?
Last year we actually bookended the Lambeth Country Fair, which is a free event that takes place the weekend following our festival, and so there was a lot of potential sharing that could take place in fencing, toilets, tentage, and also having the 2 events next to each other actually helped with minimizing the amount of heavy plants that had to go on and off the park.
Oh, yeah.
If the events were several weeks apart, then the number of trucks going on and off is double. So yeah, we just tried to minimize any impact on the space, to also make sure that it can be used by the general public.
Sorry, no. Was the other event something that you were aware of before fully committing to Sunfall Festival, or was it something you were made aware of once the planning had started and you just thought, hold on, there's a potential working relationship here?
It wasn't a deciding factor on the weekend that we.
It was almost part of the team.
Sorry about this.
Not a problem. The joy of live streaming. Don't worry.
The Lambeth Council is.
it wasn't.
It's their event, so it was very much in the initial planning.
Okay, so as soon as you guys went to the council.
Had that in mind, had the sharing in mind. It was a significant part of our original plan.
Fantastic, and yeah, again, anybody who's watching who's worked with a local authority event organizer, I think it's fair to say that the experience that I've had of talking to local authorities and dealing with some of the local authority event organisers is that they do have a pretty proactive attitude. I think some of them have had a bad press for undue red tape, but the way I look at it is that generally speaking, they're all quite positive with what they're wanting to do and looking to actually minimise impact on the community, but maximise the way an event can be delivered effectively. And it sounds like that's pretty much the experience you guys have had. When it came to the ticketing side of things, Andy, I'm curious to ask, with the nighttime venues as well as the actual outdoor event during the day, what is the ticketing process and how difficult is that to organise? Do people buy one ticket that gets them access to the daytime and any of the venues, and how does that whole process work?
There's a couple of parts to it. So you can buy your tickets as a joint ticket, and the specific. So you could buy the Phonox ticket, the Brixton Electric ticket, the Bus and Building ticket, and so on, and that would give you daytime and after party access of your choice. But then at the same time, we do even with tickets early doors before we announce the after parties, and so those people have the option to upgrade. So if you're a customer, it's not hugely complicated. You either initially decide I'm going to go to this after party, or alternatively you buy a day ticket and then decide an upgrade. And obviously some people just want to go to the day party, so that's fine as well. In terms of how complicated it is from our end, it's pretty complicated. I mean, you get to, if you think about when we had launched our after parties this year, there was 10 after parties, but there was 3 different price tiers of tickets: the early bird, super early bird, and the general release. So for each one of those tiers, there was 10 different options, meaning that there was 30 permutations, but then there's resident tickets. You know, when it comes down to it, it's probably impossible for us to use a dozen ticket vendors like some festivals do.
I was going to say,
so some early birds we did with Dice, and we'll do some day only tickets with a few vendors, but essentially you need a ticketing partner that know what they're doing. In our case, we use Resident Advisor, who've been excellent, and the advantage of Resident Advisor is that anyone who goes and uses the site regularly uses the event pages, and so it makes it a little bit more self-explanatory because it's familiar territory to customers who go onto Resident Advisor, and we can also set up events on Resident Advisor for specific after parties with the joint tickets on there, which again should make it a little bit easier to navigate as a customer.
Yeah.
So the answer is it's very complicated. Myself and Noah are pretty lucky that it's not really within our day-to-day tasks to manage that because it's really, really complicated. But yeah, it's obviously a price we deem worth paying.
And you said that last year's inaugural event sold out. Have you kept the capacity? What was the capacity last year? And have you kept it the same this year, or have you expanded things and gone bigger and better?
Last year the capacity was 13,000, which sold out, and this year the capacity is 20,000. So we've gone a little bit bigger.
Was there much when you mentioned, Noah, that the site fundamentally has stayed the same and there's not been too much of a change to the site layout? What did you have to do in order to handle the extra 7,000 capacity? Was it just a case of keeping things roughly in the same place and simply expanding the fence lines, or what extra things did you have to put in place in order to make the site compatible with the larger capacity?
The site layout is in fact changing slightly this year, but in terms of because we're appealing to quite niche styles of music and people who are into specific artists. But we've increased tent size for the 3 stages that aren't outside.
Yeah.
And then in front of the main stage, there's probably enough room for 3/4 of the site's capacity anyway. So yeah, the capacities, as long, one of the worst things you can do is, I think, is probably not put sometimes events will not increase the tent structure size.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, as long
They'll
as you
try and
can
keep the cost the
accommodate.
same, won't they? They'll keep the cost
Yeah.
the same structure size, and just sort of hope that they can squeeze more people in. But similarly, going back to something you mentioned earlier about having the sides on the tent, if you have no sides on there, you can generally get a couple of extra thousand people around the outsides watching in. With the decision that you guys have got for various reasons that we've talked about having the sides on, I suppose you've not really got any choice but to go larger in size in order to deal with an extra capacity.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So yeah, the tent structures have all sort of grown in to a similar sort of ratio as the increase in tickets.
When it comes to sourcing the suppliers at that time of year, and I suppose the difficulty may have been last year, I suppose once you get the first year under your belts and prove that it's a success, generally speaking, I suppose you can go back to a lot of the suppliers and say, look, pencil it in for next year, and great. But last year, was there any issue at all in sourcing the suppliers that you needed for a London event in the middle of summertime, when historically that's one of the busiest times of the year already for suppliers?
It was fine actually. Because we've been trading out in Croatia for a number of years, and we actually take a lot of production equipment out from the UK. So a number of the suppliers we used at the festival were the same people that we've been using for a number of years, and our production company also, they work on multiple shows throughout the year, so they had some good relationships in place, and so as a first year event, it was actually smoother for us than I guess for a lot of other first year events would be.
And when you draw on all that experience and you look to plan for next year and beyond, are there already plans afoot for next year? And is there a grand design as to where you would like to see Sunfall in 5 years' time?
I'm not sure. I think we need to. It's early days still. I think we need to reaffirm our position within the market this year, and increase the good foundations that we've built. So at the moment, all our eyes are just set on this year's event and making that the best it can be.
You mentioned, Andy, that the capacity is up or can go up to 20,000 for this year. Is it a sellout, or are there tickets still available for this year?
Tickets still available. It's selling very well. We've already exceeded last year's capacity, but yeah, there's tickets available. Just to expand on what Noah said, I think with an inner city festival, there's a critical mass because of its costs of production, in which you can start to turn a profit. But at the same time, I think what we're really keen on is my experience of London festivals in general. Not all of them, but a lot of London festivals have a kind of attitude of, let's just get through this year and let's survive financially, because there's so much money at risk. But I think the main thing for us is we had such a nice crowd last year. We had a really cool crowd, really nice mixture, and the feedback on sound was so good. If we can do that again, I think you get into a virtuous circle where people go because they know it's going to be good, and artists play because they know it's going to be good, And I think our long-term plan is to get into a virtuous circle over and above any specific numbers in terms of forecasting.
A couple of things I wouldn't mind touching on just briefly before we look to wrap up today's episode of the podcast. The first one is communication with local residents. As I've alluded to earlier in the episode, the location is in it's in the city. There are residential areas around the park. What sort of communication do you have as an event with those local residents to make sure they're fully informed of what's happening? And of course, the better you do that, I think everybody would agree that the better a chance you've got to make the event a success, because you're going to hopefully eliminate and avoid any pitfalls of angry residents.
I mean, we do send out a street team will go out and do letterbox drops with the majority of residents in the roads that are in the sort of close vicinity. We offer a number of free tickets, as well as then a discount link for anyone who doesn't manage to get one of the free tickets. Again, it's sort of, we have to work with Lambeth Council. They're the people who I guess are the most public facing part of the event. You know, it's usually the council that will be the first port of call for any issues, and you know, all events do come with certain people who are sort of naysayers towards the event taking place or whatnot, and these are just always you know, things that you have to work around and work with the people in the area. There's always going to be someone who doesn't like the fact that a bit of a public space is being used for a commercial event, but then Lambeth have to run commercial events in order to meet their budgets so that they can run the free events. You know, Lambeth Country Fair is a free event that gets 100,000 people visiting the event, and they wouldn't be able to stage things like the country fair or the fireworks or whatnot without the income made by working with people wanting to put on commercial events.
The other thing that
generally for every sort of naysayer, there's always a few hundred people who are actually applauding the fact that you're bringing something of cultural worth to an area. You know, the crowd was one of the most well-respecting, nice audiences, and the music that we brought to the park was, you know, it's not dance music for louts. It's intelligent music for fans of independent musicians and whatnot.
And the feeling that I got, just briefly on that note, the feeling that I got looking through your website and various other social media pages is very much that it is a certain genre of music, but it's, although there will be aficionados of that music, it does seem to be something that is advertised and is promoted as being quite accessible to anybody, to a lover of any type of music, if they wanted to go along just for the daytime event and experience what it is. It does seem to have that accessible feel about all of the information that's out there. I don't know if that's a deliberate thing, but it's just something that I picked up on when looking through your pages.
I think there's a degree to which certain types of dance music are tribal, and you know, you could be very, very specific. You know, there's some festivals that are just drum and bass, for example. We touch on a lot of genres, but I think it's fair to say that a lot of artists will have things in common across the genres. And it's you know, I think what you're alluding to is that a lot of artists such as Roy Ayers or Larry Heard, who are playing, their music's quite warm and melodic, and so it's relatively accessible in that sense. But I think the common thread through what we're booking across the genres is that kind of it is a seriousness or a love for a certain type of underground music. And we did a thing with Time Out, I remember last summer, where certain artists spoke about who they were looking forward to seeing at the festival, and Goldie was saying he loved Josie Rebelle and the fact that she was playing, and even though he said something along the lines of, even though what we play is completely different, I bet we both listen to the same sort of music on our iPod. And I think there's a definite, there's a definite something to be said that someone who will go and see the Black Madonna might also want to go and see Moses Boyd live, or I think the crossover isn't necessarily musical, but attitudinal.
Absolutely. Again, just looking at the time and heading towards the end of today's episode, one thing I wanted to just clarify very quickly with both of you is the timings, because as we've made very clear during today's episode, the Sunfall Festival is a combination of two distinct elements: the outdoor element during the day, and then the club element in indoor venues in the evening. How do the actual timings work? So what time will the gates open? What time is the last artist finishing on the main stage, and how quickly do people then leave the outdoor area and head off to those nighttime venues?
So the festival doors open at 11:30, and the first artist starts at midday, and the last artist finish at 11 p.m. The festival after parties start around 10 p.m. and go all the way through. Some finish at 3, some finish at 4. I think some finish as late as 6. I might be right on that. Yeah, about 6 a.m. And what's quite nice, we're not a festival that goes, look at this massive headliner. The festival isn't dominated by one act being bigger than the other, or even headline billing. Everything's in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
I want it to be an experience. So some people might leave a little bit earlier. Obviously, the majority of people will stay for whoever's closing the main stage. But the experience last year was really nice because the sun was going down. It was a really nice sunset when Jamie XX was closing the festival, which a lot of people remarked on. And then myself personally, I walked out of the festival and walked down towards Brixton in order to go to Phonox. And the street was just, there's a lot of people quite. It wasn't like when you leave a football match and the streets are packed. It was pretty steady. It was pretty nice, and it was kind of quite a pleasant little. Some people stopped some food on the way. Some people went to the pub. Some people went kind of rushed straight there. And I think it's fair to say overall, the shared experience of leaving and knowing the night's not over, as opposed, is a really nice feature of the festival, and really nice common ground. Just because a lot of people, you'll leave the festival and there'll be like this scramble for an after party because people have maybe had a drink or they're ready to carry on partying. And I think that's a really big part of what Sunfall is and what it'll be in the long term.
And I guess going back to this idea that there are after parties, but not everybody will go to those, you've got a percentage of people who might be wanting to leave the site really quickly and get to one of the venues. You've got a percentage of people who have already made that decision that they're going to go home. So unlike other events that finish at 11 o'clock and thousands of people leave the area, perhaps not with any idea about what they're going to do or where they're going to go or what mood they may be in. Presumably the area disperses relatively quickly, I would guess, because you've got that really good mixture of people who have got a definite idea of where they're going.
Exactly. And one thing we noticed last year, that there was several hundred people who bought tickets who went to Coco for an event that wasn't our own. And so we realised that quite a significant chunk of people had crossed the river to come. And I guess we kind of had in our heads that it would be a South London thing. So this year we've got, one of the after parties is Giles Peterson hosting the Jazz Cafe in Camden. We're doing Village Underground in Shoreditch, Mangle in London Fields. And so some people will be going right across London. More than likely, there's people who live in East London or North London, and they'll be travelling back to where they're from to go to the after parties. And again, we think that will really make it quite a nice dispersal and not too onerous on the neighbours who live around there.
Guys, thanks very much for joining us today. I'm going to be wrapping things up very, very shortly. Before I do, I'm going to take a little look ahead to the next episode of the Event Industry News podcast, and a fascinating subject. We're going to be looking at Androids, the first live music event of its kind. It's an immersive cinematic musical journey which transports the audience to a digital world, an hour-long live show that consists of projected 3D animated film synced to an electronic dance music soundtrack performed by live emerging artist Sartori. So we're going to be speaking to the creator about how it's been conceptualized, how the piece works, and what it's going to mean for the attendees. But going back to today's episode, we've been talking about the Sunfall Festival. I should say, is it sunfallfestival.co.uk that people can head to? What's the website, guys?
It's just
Sunfall.co.uk.
Sunfall.co.uk, and as I said, search for the Sunfall Festival on whatever social media platform you're on, because they've got some great stuff out there. And we're going to thank our guests for today from the Sunfall Festival, Noah Ball and Andy Peyton. Thanks very much for joining us today, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
We're going to be wrapping things up there. Head over to eventindustrynews.com for more information. There's going to be some links up about the Sunfall Festival. If you're watching this after our live stream, don't forget that you can also get the audio-only version of all the Event Industry News podcasts via iTunes. Today's podcast is kindly sponsored by N200 GES, our smart event solution partner. For more information on N200 and its smart event solutions, please head over and visit n200.com. A huge thanks to those guys whose support helps to keep the podcast going. And don't forget that you can tweet us if you've got any thoughts, opinions, questions, ideas for forthcoming episodes of the Event Industry News podcast. Tweet us at Event News Blog with any comments and suggestions that you've got. Once again, thank you to our guests this evening from the Sunfall Festival, Noah Ball and Andy Peyton. My name is James Dixon. You've been watching the Event Industry News podcast, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.